Greetings, Fright fans, and happy Halloween! Welcome in to Dr. Gangrene's Halloween Countdown for 2024. That's right, it's that time again, the spooky season. And I am so glad that all of you out there decided to join me here this year. We're going to have a great time. We're going to count down 31 films in a specific theme, one a day throughout the month of October. I've been doing these countdowns since 2017. They've been a blast. Last year we looked at creepy crawly films with things that creeped and crawled and slimed and oozed and all kinds of fun stuff. This year's going to be another fun theme. As you can see, I've got the lab all decorated here, ready for Halloween. Skeleton decided to dress as Frankenstein this year. Looks like he went with Son of Frankenstein. And that's an appropriate costume because this year's theme is one that's wrapped very closely with where my mindset's been all year, and that is horror hosts. Now, horror hosts have been around since the 1950s, and when they first started, horror hosts hosted something called the Shock Shock package of films. And we're going to count down 31 films from that Shock package. That's right, 31 films that were shown by horror hosts back in the day. But let's take a little closer look at the Shock package so you can learn a little bit more about what it was all about. 1957 was the year that horror programming exploded across America with the release of the Shock movie package. This was a collection of 52 films from Universal Studios that were packaged together and released through Screen Gems, a television subsidiary of Columbia Pictures. The films in the package were all made between 1931 and 1946, and they spanned the genres of horror, science fiction, mystery, and a few crime and spy films thrown in for good measure. They were syndicated across the country, and stations were encouraged to have a costume host on the program to increase interest. The concept caught on, and suddenly there were vampires, mad scientists, and spooky ghouls on the airwaves across the nation. The host was often an employee of the station, a weatherman or booth announcer coerced to dress in a silly costume and introduce the evening's offerings, returning during breaks to keep the audiences entertained. The shows became wildly popular in their markets, and the hosts themselves became local celebrities, oftentimes more popular than the films themselves. In 1958, a second collection of films was released for television called Son of Shock. It consisted of another 20 films, not in the original Shock package, once again spanning the genres of horror, sci-fi, and they were films released between 1932 and 1945. The Shock package of films was amazingly popular and revolutionary. Just imagine yourself a kid in 1957, okay? Television's relatively new at this point, and for the first time ever, these horror movies are shown right in your living room. This must have blown their minds. The horror movies, I can stay right here and see them. And if you don't catch it, you're not going to get to see it again for a long time because they're not in theaters. There is no streaming on demand. This is it. Not only that, but there was a costume host, their guy in their market, showing these things. Amazing. It was so popular that just 6 months after the Shock package was released, they went ahead and announced Son of Shock, the second 20 films. So the original package had 52 films, one a week. Think about that. Enough programming so stations all across the country could show monster movies all year long. Then they released another 20 and kept the ball rolling. And then with reruns, this thing went for years. The hosts, like I said, became so popular. You got names like Zachary and Tarantula Ghoul. There were some great ones out there. And these folks were showing these things. The kids were digging it. So, you know, here in Nashville, in the Nashville area, we had Dr. Lucifer. That was our first host, played by Ken Bramming. And he showed the Shock package of films, and in fact his show was called Shock. Many people refer to it as Shock Theater, but it was just Shock, and named after the package of films. And that's what he showed, all this great Universal stuff. So yeah, we're going to count those down, and this is going to be a lot of fun. Nothing screams Halloween to me as much as those old Universal classics. They're just unbeatable. They're so good. So I think you guys are going to enjoy this, and a lot of these films are very easily easy to find, so you can watch them along with me as we're going. I've got all the entries in my beaker here, my Mad Science beaker. We're gonna make our own Mad Science monster here. So let me reach into the beaker of madness here to see what tonight's first movie is gonna be. Now, like I said, there were 52 of them, so we're only counting down 31 of them. I picked 31 of the ones that looked interesting to me and that I felt like talking about. Okay, here we go. Got the first one pulled out here. Tonight, we're gonna kick this thing off with a true classic that most of you out there have probably seen. Can't believe this one came up first. Dracula. This 1931 adaptation of the Bram Stoker novel was a huge success for Universal and can arguably be said to have helped save the studio, which was in financial trouble at the time of release. Dracula was considered a risky project, yet it was approved at the behest of new studio head, 21-year-old Carl Laemmle Jr. Todd Browning was selected as director and originally wanted his former leading man of silent films such as The Unholy Three, London After Midnight, and The Unknown, Lon Chaney Sr., for the lead role, but he was ill and unable to take the part. Chaney died of lung cancer in August of 1930. The role eventually went to 49-year-old Hungarian actor Bela Lugosi, who had played the lead in the stage version of Dracula. This launched a new era for Universal Pictures, becoming the first in a successful string of horror pictures throughout the 30s and 40s. There are some major changes from the novel, chief among them being it is Renfield who travels to Europe to procure the land deal with Dracula, rather than Jonathan Harker as in the book. It's an odd choice, but one I don't mind because it means we get more screen time for Dwight Fry, who plays Renfield. Lugosi is mesmeric in the lead role, and it's his mannerisms, voice, and delivery that have become synonymous with Dracula over the years. Much of the success of this picture must be attributed to cinematographer Karl Freund, as well as the amazing sets in Dracula's castle, which are massive. Dracula feels a bit dated in places, more like a silent picture in its pacing and acting, to be honest. And for a vampire picture, there is almost no blood in the film. And, curiously, Dracula never sprouts fangs. It nevertheless remains a horror staple, gothic, atmospheric, and an absolute classic. All right, Dracula, starring Bela Lugosi. Boy, a heavy hitter for day one, huh? Tell you, it just doesn't get much better than that as far as getting in the Halloween spirit. Lugosi is so good in this movie. He was coming off the stage play, having done it for years, and the role was really his. That Hungarian accent became just synonymous with vampires in general, but Dracula is specifically. So, you know, Dwight Fry, boy, I love me some Dwight Fry. He is so good as Renfield in this. Man, I'm gonna have to go ahead and give this one a perfect 5 skulls. It is a little slow in places, but you have to realize that this was coming right off the silent era. This is one of the earliest talkie horror movies, and they're still figuring it out. But the influence of this film was felt for years and years, and still Lugosi's image is the one that comes to people's minds when you say Dracula. That's some staying power. That deserves 5 skulls. So go ahead and let me know what you guys think about Dracula down in the comments below, and be sure and tune back in here tomorrow night. We'll keep this countdown going with more fun stuff from the Shock package of films. Until then, see you tomorrow night. Dr. Gangrene saying, stay mad.